Garden Success is brought to you in part by Martha's Bloomers, celebrating 25 years in Central Texas and offering gardeners a variety of plants grown for the region, along with a wide assortment of tools, potting containers, and a full-service restaurant. Martha's Bloomers, located on Highway 6 in Navasota.
Welcome to Garden Success with Stephen Brueggerhoff, the show designed to help you have a bountiful garden and a beautiful landscape. Call in now with your lawn and garden questions at 979-845-5689 or email your questions to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. And now, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Stephen Brueggerhoff.
Well, howdy, friends, and welcome to Garden Success. We are here every Thursday starting at 12 o'clock, and I'm so glad to be here in the saddle and not outside. Did you experience that extreme heat we had yesterday? I think it got up to be about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit warmer around my house. It literally felt like walking out into an oven. If you can just imagine that. If you were out there, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm really curious to see how your plants, how your landscape is played out after an extreme heat event like we had yesterday. Were you able to keep up with watering? You're making sure every plant that you have, especially in containers, were well watered to withstand that kind of heat? Give me a call, 979-845-5689. I'd love to hear from you and discover your experience yesterday. Now, from my experience, from my perspective, everything was fine. It was just uncomfortable for me. But I made sure that all of my 18 fig trees in containers were well watered prior to the day getting on yesterday, so everything's fine out there. The garden that I have, in-ground garden, vegetable garden, as well as landscape, ornamental landscape garden, they were fine as well. I managed to make sure that I had applied water, appropriate amount of water, ahead of that heat, just to make sure that things didn't dry out too much. Now, coincidentally, my irrigation schedule for my lawn as well as my ornamental plantings, there's a pop-up sprinkler system in the house that we had purchased. I've been very satisfied with it, no breaks in the lines. I've actually had the company come back out that had installed it originally, providing a little bit of service and follow-up for me, and providing me with a diagram of where those irrigation lines were laid out at the house. I think that's very important for you to take into consideration, dear listener, if you're purchasing a new house and you're stepping into a new situation. Right, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe the inspector doesn't catch everything, and now you've got to deal with it, right? Well, we didn't receive a irrigation map, and the former owners didn't have one. No harm, no foul. But I did have the name of the irrigation company that installed it, and they provided me with a nice diagram so that I know approximately where those lines are. I did dig in the ground late last year to install some plants, and now I know where some of those irrigation lines are just from physical action, but you may not be able to do that. If you can, identify, get a diagram if you can get it. It'll help you in the long run to know how to isolate problems and fix them as well, and then work with an irrigation specialist, a licensed irrigation specialist that you have coming out to your lawn or your landscape. So, getting back to my story, I know where the lines are. Everything is working efficiently. I just actually had it scheduled to come on yesterday morning, so that was fine. Monitored the plants before I left for work, and then came home. I didn't go outside until about 7 o'clock last night. I was like, oh no, what are my fig trees going to look like, But everything was fine. And, I have those few special children that need a little bit of extra care, and I took care of them this morning. We are going to get sustained heat now. We are in the middle of summer. It's going to be in the upper 90s. There's no turning back, right? And now you're just going to have to hold on, monitor as far as maintenance of your plants, especially with water. We need to be very careful how we apply water to our landscape. Lawns, you're not going to be watering your lawn every other day. Three times a week is in excess. Make sure that you're watering your lawn once during the week, maybe twice, but that's going to be under a special, under a special circumstance. You should never have to water your landscape or your lawn more than once a week, making sure that you're getting good depth penetration. You may have to cycle and soak, which means priming the lawn, performing this early in the morning or late in the evening, right? And just having the sprinkler system, depending on your circumstance and information that you've received from BV Water Smart, if you're subscribed to that free service to our community, going by their recommendations for watering and splitting that one application up during the day, priming it, letting it rest for about an hour, and then having your irrigation come on for the remainder of the full time that you need to irrigate your lawn or your landscape. Ensuring that you're getting at least 1 inch of depth penetration per week, and your landscape should be fine and make it through. Some of our landscapes, I hate to say this, and I know it's hard to hear this, but for our landscapes, we're not trying to work against nature. We're actually working in partnership with nature, understanding how the plants function. There will be a little bit of wilting in your landscape, in the lawn, in the yard, in the landscape that you've got in your gardens. That's all right. Right? You may have a plant that wilts daily, and you've had applied adequate water to the landscape. Just evaluate, monitor, and adjust what you're doing. But it's okay if some plants wilt a little bit, especially after a deep watering. Just kind of let them rock out. Right? You don't want them to wilt completely, but a slight wilting is fine. The plants are compensating for the stress that they're undergoing. And the goal not only is to maintain your landscape, but also be a responsible citizen and conserve some of those resources like water applied at the right time, the scheduling at the right time, getting appropriate plants for your landscape, etc. And then before you know it, summer will be done. And then you've got October, right? In my experience, summer really isn't done until, after the last week of September. Okay, maybe we've had those special months every year where that hasn't happened, or we've had an extended dry spell going into early October. But from my experience, right around the end of September, things start to cool down a little bit. So I'm going to look forward to that. So getting back to the top of what I was mentioning a few moments ago, everything's fine in my landscape. I'm really pleased with how my plants have handled it, and I'm still keeping in mind that we need to conserve the water and the resources that we're applying to our landscape. So, again, this is a live program. Give me a call. Let me know how things fared for you yesterday. 979-845-5689. Now, of course, I do get some requests and some correspondence from some of our residents during the week, and a few in the past week as well. If y'all remember from last week, folks, I did invite and had an opportunity to have a segment that we're going to host monthly called Ask the Plant Doctor. And this is an opportunity for you to talk live with one of our specialists from the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab. So we had Dr. Kevin Ong. He's the director of the lab itself, as well as a professor and associate department head in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology at Texas A&M University. He graciously came on last week to kick this off. The next time that we'll have staff from the lab come to our the studio will be August the 20th. So go ahead and mark your calendar and plan on visiting with one of the staff from the lab. They're outstanding professionals, They provide an outstanding service for us. If you have if you have an issue with a plant at home, maybe you suspect that you have a fungal pathogen on an ornamental plant, which I'll visit that topic in just a moment. Or, you're just curious about something that doesn't appear quite right in your landscape. You talk to me first. I'm the frontline person, the frontline educator with the extension office here in Bryan. And then, if I can't figure it out with you, we'll start to pursue potentially sending a sample to the lab, to the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab. Outstanding individuals. They have a pretty quick turnaround. I'd say within at least 1 week or 2 weeks of receiving that sample. And there's a proper way to submit them to the lab, and I can always work that out with you as well in consultation. So, our folks, our colleagues here are here to help you be successful in your landscape. So again, I'm on the front line helping to figure it out. If I can't get to it, we'll always rely on our specialists with the lab. Also, next month, August the 20th, I'll have another specialist from the lab join me on the program. And prior to that, a couple of weeks ago, you remember, I had Dr. Jake Maurer. He's a professor and director of the Soil, Water, and Forage Testing Lab. And I had a really good conversation with Dr. Maurer, with Jake. You can always review the programs. These past episodes are available on KAMU website, as well as the place where you like to get your podcasts, right? You can always retrieve past episodes of this program if you'd like to listen to it, or if you call in and you just like to hear yourself talk, right? That's a great opportunity to review some of the past programs that we have. Now, here's an inquiry that I received from a gentleman, and it is related to fungal pathogens, and I'll explain what's going on. Well, the discussion of a potential of a fungal pathogen. So a gentleman named Joel, he called me up on the phone, I believe, and he also sent a couple of pictures through email. He has some bald cypress. Folks, if you don't know what bald cypress is, literally just drive through the municipal areas, urban areas, or maybe your own neighborhood, and you will see bald cypress. Bald cypress is a deciduous tree. It looks like a Christmas tree, right? It is a native plant of Texas. Taxodium disticum, I believe, is the botanical name on that. They get really large, and there are a few that have been identified as having a smaller profile. There's a different species from Mexico. It's called the Montezuma bald cypress. While it won't get to be 80 feet tall, still, it has a little bit more of a modest profile in the landscape. Bald cypress are known for existing along riparian areas in Texas. If you go out towards Wimberley, that's the first thing that came to mind is Wimberley, or some other cities that do have riparian areas or rivers or creekside, out in central Texas. You will see bald cypress, really tall, majestic trees with feather-like foliage on them. In the wintertime, they are deciduous in the winter, and before they start losing their leaves, the leaves will turn this wonderful cinnamon color, right? They just look outstanding as they drop their leaves. Now, the plant is very, I would say it's more flexible in different soil profiles. So what I'm trying to get at is it will perform well in a soil profile that does become somewhat saturated occasionally from the rains that we get. It'll also perform well in a well-draining soil. We always thought that possibly the bald cypress only should exist in along a pond, right next to a pond or a creek. But that's not the case. These plants can perform quite magnificently upland outside of a water, area or an area that receives a lot of water. It does form knees. That's the only challenge with this particular plant. It's evolved over time to create these structures that are called, okay, now I'm starting to get off into botanical land, so you'll bear with me, folks. But anyway, those knees are called pneumatophores. Write it down. I'm not going to spell it out because I can't think of how to spell it properly, but if you talk to your favorite browser and just try to type it in phonetically, you'll get there. So a pneumatophore, it's a structure that's produced by the bald cypress, and those are, we call those the knees of the bald cypress. When a plant like bald cypress, which has already evolved to be able to form these structures to have adequate oxygen exchange while they're sitting in water, right? So that's what these structures do. They help with oxygen exchange to the root zone of the plant itself, which is, I think that's outstanding. But if you've got this plant planted in this tree planted in your yard, your backyard, and then, it looks majestic, but now you've got a challenge with this plant starting to form knees, right? These pneumatophores, these structures in your landscape. And now you're cursing the day that you you thought you wanted this plant. They do look beautiful, folks. I wouldn't recommend to put them in your front yard too close to your house. Maybe if you've got property and you can put them in the backdrop, right? On the back part of your property, where if those knees start running or raising up, it's not so much of a problem as far as maintenance goes for you, right? So they do look great, but, I like to say in an appropriate setting, right? In my subdivision, in the subdivision that my wife and I purchased a house about a year ago, it is a go-to landscape plant or landscape tree. Unfortunately, the neighborhood that we live in, nothing against my neighborhood, it's a wonderful neighborhood to live in. Our neighbors are outstanding, but the front lawn is not very big. It's a very small postage stamp, and there are bald cypresses that are planted within those front lawns. Well, now that they're getting some time on them, some growth, they start to take over that entire area. So that may not be the outcome that was anticipated by the neighbors that had planted them. It's possible that the trees were planted as far as a list of plants that were approved for the neighborhood. So even though it's approved, it still may not be the right place to put that tree in your yard. So the bottom line with bald cypress, and I'll get off my horse in about 2 seconds, the bald cypress, keep considering them for use in your house, at your landscape, but put them in the right place, because they will get really large and occupy quite a bit of space in your landscape. So Joel has showed me a picture with some marginal necrosis on the foliage. What that means is the foliage was kind of turning a little bit more cinnamon on the outer edges of those feathery needles. That's the best way for me to describe the foliage itself. It's kind of needle-like, right? That it was turning a little bit cinnamon colored outside of its natural process, right? They're not supposed to go deciduous at this time of year, but this one was starting to lose leaves. Internal, the midrib of each individual leaf, not on all of them, but on some of the leaves, on the foliage on this tree, were still kind of green. All right, so I'm setting the scenario for you. Now, a few things came to mind as I responded to Joel. There was 2 things possibly that could be going on. One is spider mite infestation. Right now, I've not gone to his house. I haven't collected any foliage, so I'm doing this remotely. Spider mite infestation is potentially one of the reasons the foliage was starting to come off color and look like it's starting to die. And the other one is water stress. or drought-like conditions, right? Related to drought-like conditions. So if he's got spider mite on the foliage in the canopy, he'll have to get a hand lens and look at the leaves closely. Folks, if you're familiar with what a spider mite looks like, and keep in mind there's many different species of spider mites that you may, right, get an infestation on patio container plants or sometimes your landscape plants as well. You'll see these tiny little dark colored specks. Sometimes they're tiny little dots. They're about the size of the head of a pen, P-E-N, right? And they're just kind of cruising along the foliage, or possibly stems. Mostly you'll see them on the foliage. There's one indication you've got an insect, right? If it's crawling, if it looks like a dirt speck and it's crawling, it's going to be an insect. 2, if it has webbing associated with it, spider mites do create a kind of webbing, and sometimes it's very indiscreet, right? You'll have to look really closely at the foliage or other parts that look affected just to see if there's a really fine webbing associated with that. And then 3, if you see an associated speckled look to the foliage, right? So, putting all that together, he might have an infestation of spider mites, but I asked him, just look at your foliage, get out a hand lens, maybe a magnifying glass that you haven't used since high school or college, because I used magnifying glasses in college. Fortunately, in my profession, we have these devices, magnifying lenses called loupes, L-O-U-P-E, and I've got several at my office. Right, so we just use a magnification. You can use your camera on your cell phone as well. Just try to get some sort of focus to see if you can identify that insect. Now, let's say he does have mite damage. How do you deal with that on a huge tree, a bald cypress, that could be 30 feet up in the air, and you're not going to get to all the foliage, right? You'll be able to examine some of the foliage. How do you deal with that? Well, there are, the best recommendation I can give for treatment for a bald cypress that large is, and it's going to sound like, oh no, I'm not going to do that, folks. But it can be effective, is just taking the end of a hose, creating a jet spray on it, and just trying to, at intervals, just trying to wash those leaves off. Spider mites proliferate in hot and dry conditions, and so if we change those conditions somewhat, you'll reduce the population. The plant itself, the tree, will survive an infestation. Even if I've never seen a major infestation on bald cypress, but it could happen. You can control that somewhat. Just create a little bit more humid environment on that plant to the best of your ability. Now, you can rely on products that contain insecticidal soap or horticultural oils or even miticides, but for a large tree like a bald cypress, like I'm anticipating, that the size of that tree is in Joel's yard, it's not going to be practical to apply a miticide to spray that on the foliage and get good saturation and coverage. You need specialized equipment for that. You need to ensure for the safety of yourself as well as your neighbors, so you reduce any kind of drift, right? Applying at a certain time of day, etc. So any product that you're using, always explicitly follow label directions for application and any environmental warnings for your health and the health of the environment. So we're going to take spider mite off the table now. I did ask Joel to report back to me, just go ahead and send me a quick email, tell me if he's got spider mites on it or not. But more than likely the tree is responding to the drought-like conditions we had before these rains that we received recently, right? It's just a conservation response of the tree to dry conditions, right? And we experienced that at the onset of summer. So the tree might be compensating for those dry conditions, and now some of the leaves are, the moisture doesn't get up to the leaves as they should. There's a little bit of disruption in the vascular system, and so the plants themselves respond. They're like, well, okay, this is just one way for me to deal with drought-like conditions, and they'll start to shed some leaves. But from the image that I saw, there's not a lot of that kind of effect on the foliage. So I think that Joel, while it was great for him to contact me and we could have this conversation, still all is not lost. The tree is fine from what I could tell, and just some things that I could use to assist him in that. Now, he did ask me if there was a good reference for an irrigation schedule specific to these bald cypress. Now, unfortunately, I could not find a reference from my authorities for specific to bald cypress, right? So irrigation specific to them. Do you water them the same as the other trees? My information to him is, well, yes, right? A well-established tree has adapted to local conditions. It sounds like his has been in the ground for quite a number of years. It's compensating for drought-like conditions it underwent, right? It experienced earlier this summer, and it's compensating for that. And so, if we start getting into a drier period, I recommended to him just add supplemental irrigation as needed, just to apply to this tree. And there you go, folks. So, bald cypress in the ground. I will contact one of our specialists, Texas A&M Forest Service specialists, to see if there's any additional information I can provide specific to the taxodium, to the bald cypress. But I just recommended to Joel, treat it like any other tree in your yard, right? Just make sure it gets adequate water at the right time. Let them get to the edge, right? Don't let them go dry completely, but just make sure that they receive adequate water during times of extreme drought. So just kind of keep an eye on that. So thank you very much, Joel, for that inquiry. It got my juices flowing, and I got to start thinking critically about cultivation and maintenance of bald cypress. And bonus, folks, y'all got a little bit more information than you probably wanted on bald cypress. Just a quick review of this native tree that we love in Texas. I think it's an outstanding tree. Right place, right plant, right place. All right. Well, folks, I received another email related to fungal pathogens. I thought I was going to go there with bald cypress, but we really didn't get to that point with that conversation. But I had a gentleman named David. Hey, David, if you're listening, thank you so much for sending this inquiry to Garden Success. Hopefully the information that I provided to you is at least some food for thought in maintaining your yaupon. So David sent in an inquiry. He said he's got some black spots on his dwarf yaupon. So folks, what a dwarf yaupon is, and some of you listening may already know this. Yaupon, the botanical name is Ilex vomitoria. It's got an exquisite species name, don't you think? Vomitoria. There's a longer story behind the naming, a specific taxonomic naming of that plant. Send me an email and I'll send you information. gardensuccess@tamu.edu. I'll send you some information about the history of yaupon, the use of yaupon by Native American groups here in Texas and over to Florida, of how it's been used and potentially how it received the name vomitoria on the species end of that. But getting back to this, yaupon is a native. I've seen it listed as a tree. It's kind of a shrub-like tree, or you could look at it as a tree-like shrub. I think technically it is a tree, but I think of it as a shrub because it's multi-stemmed. If you go out into certain natural areas, you will see it predominant in the understory of natural areas as you're hiking around. You will see somewhat of a smattering of it if you go out to Lick Creek Park here in College Station along some of the trails. Where I really see it proliferate is down along the coast. I used to be the horticulture agent for Brazoria. Now I'm for Brazos, but Brazoria County many years ago. And there's quite a thicket of yaupon in natural areas, and I really appreciate that plant. It can be used ornamentally in your landscape, but like I mentioned with bald cypress, right plant, right place. It needs to meet your aesthetic. It needs to meet any kind of restrictions that you have with your HOA, right? And those policies are in place for the betterment of your neighborhood. Let's just hang with that, right? But yaupon can be used effectively in your landscape, but they get to be large shrub-like trees, right? There is a selection called dwarf yaupon. That is not a hybrid. It is the same species, Ilex vomitoria. It's just a plant that was found somewhere along the past 50 years. I'm making that part up, right? But what I'm not too far off on is this is a genetic mutation of the species plant that doesn't grow as large as the species. So it's called dwarf yaupon. Still has the same botanical name. It's just a genetic anomaly that is now propagated and then promoted and sold through retail outlets. So David has a dwarf yaupon, which means you can keep this yaupon trimmed in a formal shape. You can use it like you would boxwood. As a matter of fact, I really don't recommend boxwood for your landscape. If you've got some in your backyard or your front yard and it's performing well for you, no harm, no foul. But I think the dwarf yaupon performs a little bit better in our landscape, right? And you can use it in a similar aesthetic as you would for boxwood as well. Both boxwood and yaupon do have some diseases, that they can succumb to more along the line boxwood than yaupon, right? So yaupon, I've never seen it really die out per se, but I have seen it undergo the same conditions that David had described. So David said he's got some black spots on his dwarf yaupon. And he was going to send pics, but I haven't seen them yet. So I have to kind of go through my list, my Rolodex, if y'all remember what a Rolodex is, folks. But I have to go through that little, catalog of information that I have in my head, as well as resources that I've saved about the potential diseases that yaupon can undergo. One of them is a fungal pathogen infection, right? Members of the holly family, and this is a member of the Aquafoliaceae, the holly family. Ilex, Burford holly is in that family as well, if you're familiar with that plant that's used as a shrub. So yaupon is a member of that family. Dwarf yaupon is a member of that family. Burford hollies are a member of that family, etc. It's an ilex. They are susceptible to fungal pathogens, and it can potentially include yaupon, right? Dwarf yaupon is in that same family. Now, potentially, right, it could be this one pathogen that we identify as Cercospora. Cercospora. Now remember that word, folks, because I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to bring back the word Cercospora when I talk about figs. You knew I had to talk about figs today. So anyway, potentially it could be Cercospora. What that is, right, it's a fungal pathogen. It's a group of sac fungi or fungi. It's an ascomycete. What that is, it's a microscopic sac-like structure that holds sexually produced spores called ascospores. So technically, Cercospora is like a little balloon full of full of little spores inside of it. And under the right condition, when that little sac bursts, then you've got spores that are released, and voila, you've got more of the fungal pathogen that's going to spread. The infection generally presents as a small circular spots, and it has distinct brown, kind of purple, or a little bit of reddish borders, right? As the spots enlarge, their centers often turn gray or white and may drop out completely, right? It kind of creates a shot hole kind of effect. And the spores themselves, they release a toxin that destroys plant cell membranes. So a little bit more information for you to kind of sock away in your brain pan as well. So it's possible that what he has is an infection caused by a group of sac fungi called Cercospora on his yaupon. For that, in that case, the best method of managing that, of course, is to adjust any kind of watering schedule that they may have. These are not swimming fungi, but they can be spread, of course, by other means. Certainly, if he's got irrigation that hits that, just adjusting the irrigation, maybe diverting the head or the spray pattern that it's not hitting the foliage or allows the plant to dry out during the day. Just kind of clean up the leaves as best he can, those that drop on the ground. He may have to do some selective pruning on it. I really don't know how he's maintaining that dwarf yaupon, if he's keeping it in a formal shape, like a ball shape or a square shape as well. So anyway, he may have to do some selective pruning. And my recommendation is, as a last resort, to apply fungicides, right? And you can use products containing chlorothalonil or mancozeb, active ingredients, propiconazole. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce that correctly. I can read it, I just can't pronounce it. Or any kind of copper-based elements, right? So I suggested to him, use fungicides as a last resort. Just modify your cultural practices, and you'll be able to get that under control. And not that it's not detrimental to the plant, it's more aesthetically displeasing. So my recommendations to David is, we've somewhat identified it without a sample. I couldn't really tell him or, directly tell him, but I'm just providing some potential for what it could be and what I know about that particular plant family. Now, there are some information online, of course. AgriLife Extension does have some fact sheets on plant pathogens as well online. Our colleagues with Clemson University provides insight into holly diseases and insects, as well as North Carolina State Extension. So there's plenty of information to go around and share to try to identify what's going on with David's dwarf yaupon. So David, thank you very much for that inquiry. I really do appreciate it, and it allows me to continue to do research and learn as well. I've got a lot of information in my head, folks, but we can always learn as adults. We can always continue the process of learning. And I know you want to continue that process as well. And this is a great way to segue to tell you that we're continuing to have a great association with the Clara B. Muntz Library in Bryan. This last Saturday on the 18th, I had an outstanding presentation. It was called Landscape Design with Native Plants. And so I talked about my experience with native plants, my knowledge that I shared, as well as a few basic concepts of landscape design, right, to keep in mind. So a suite of plants that may work well in our environment here in Bryan College Station, as well as covering some basic design tips with our clients. Guess how many people came to the program? Yep, that's right. I had 60 people in that room. And the AC was working. Everything was fine. It was great. We had a good time. I love presenting to folks, and I thank our residents for attending that program. I had a really good time. But this next month, August the 15th, at the Clara B. Muntz Library, we'll have our Learning at the Library series program, and this one will focus on fall vegetables. Fall vegetables for Brazos County. We have a very experienced master gardener, Louis Petter. He'll be providing that seminar. It's something you don't want to miss, especially if you're looking forward to preparing and working successfully with vegetables for a fall garden. So we ask that you join us on August the 15th at Clara B. Muntz Library in downtown Bryan, and that will start at 10 a.m. in the morning. There's no fee for that. It is our service to the community. Now, on the same day, if you got kiddos, right, you're thinking about taking them, entering them into a 4-H program, our Brazos County 4-H administrators, our agent, is hosting a Brazos County Club Fair on August the 15th. You can find out about 4-H in Brazos County. It's a come-and-go event. It's open to the public. It's designed for families to meet local 4-H clubs, learn about project opportunities, and get a hands-on look at what 4-H is all about. So, if you've got kiddos and you're thinking about getting them into programs designed for robotics or possibly fashion show or horticulture, right? This is the place to come and check that out. So that's going to be next month on August the 15th. Did I say the 15th? Yep, August the 15th. We'll look forward to seeing you either at the library or if you've got families, bring them on by our extension office for the 4-H fair. I think that'll be a wonderful opportunity for you to enjoy with us, right? Now, of course, there's always programs going on elsewhere. If you go down to Navasota, Martha's Bloomers has some great education programs that they offer every month, as well as a great restaurant, and etc. So, check them out online, marthasbloomers.com. If you're interested in other programs related to nature, the City of College Station has ongoing summer programs at the Lick Creek Park down in College Station. Just go online, check out the Parks and Recreation Department of College Station, and you'll see some of the ongoing programs, including a monthly birding 101 at their facility. Great opportunity for y'all to get out. Now, I know you're hunkering down a little bit. Yesterday was a little bit of a scare, but I know you've all taken care of yourselves, right? And again, if you've got anything you'd like to share, now's your chance. We've got about 15 more minutes on the clock. 979-845-5689. Okay, I know you're all interested in Rosette. Yep. I know you got the scare put in you, right? You've got some roses you're raising, and you just want to do the right thing. You want to cultivate them correctly to make sure that they look as fabulous as you would like them to be. Now, I've been a horticulturist for, professionally and unprofessionally. I got a degree many years ago. It's going on 25, maybe a little bit closer to 30 years now. And, I've been raising roses for a while, and I still get black spot. You're going to get black spot. You might have that one special rose that never gets black spot. But, you just you deal with it as best you can. Just keep the plants clean, prune them properly, fertilize them well, etc. But I did have a gentleman named Richard, and he actually sent a video as well as email pics. He suspects that he has Rosette. And I think that was fabulous. Right now, there have been incidents of Rosette product of Rosette infecting our plants, in College Station and Bryan. So it has been detected in the area. And of course that has us on radar, right? We're aware of it. We're just hoping we don't get the lottery on that one. And so he thought potentially he had an infection on his plants. But from what I could see on the pictures themselves, I really didn't see evidence of rosette. Now there is, oh gosh, how do I get around this? So, yes, if you suspect that you have an infection of this virus that we call rosette, yes, please get in contact with me. I'd love to explore that, see if there is the possibility. We'll do a visual inspection. If we need to, of course, I'll ask you to send in samples to the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab to see if it actually is infected. So let's put that on the table already, right? We don't want you to ignore it. Any question is a valid question. We're just trying to eliminate the possibility of that occurring, right? Now, the pictures that he sent to me, roses do have the habit of forming new growth that is reddish in color. And coincidentally, that is one of the symptoms, right? That's one of the visual cues that we use for an infection of rosette. But there are other symptoms that go along with that. It's not just that the new foliage is red. There is also a different, the way the tissue forms. And in this case, for Richard, it was typical new growth, right? It was a coloration of the new growth that is normal for the plant, right? I didn't see anything out of the ordinary physically for rosette from the picture that I got. So it's a little reddish. It appears to be normal in appearance. Now, some of the leaves had a little bit of cupping on them, right? They were a little slightly malformed, but I'm relating that to environmental circumstance. I asked him, how have you been irrigating your plants? That is a response, a natural response of the plant to irregular watering, right? Water's just not getting where it needs to go through the vascular tissue. So, and I also noticed a little bit of black spot on the plant itself. I asked him, go ahead and remove the leaves within reason, right? Just go ahead and remove the leaves that are infected with black spot, because there wasn't a lot. And, just water it at the base of the plant. Don't fertilize it right now. That's not what the plant needs. Rather, just continue to cultivate it. But I assured him, from what I could see, there wasn't any evidence of rosette. But I did come back with a caveat saying, if you are concerned and want to investigate this further, he can submit samples to the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab, and I would assist him in directing him how to do that. Right? So, great pictures, Richard. From my personal perspective, doesn't look like rosette to me. But if you want to investigate it further, you can send in samples to the lab. Well, I'd love to welcome Karen. Karen, thank you so much for calling Garden Success. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. I
have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I have a question for you. I just had a couple of raised bed gardens put in my backyard, and the landscaper filled them with garden soil. And I'm thinking to wait a few months to let it sit and get watered and come to a new equilibrium, or would you recommend I just start planting right away?
Yeah, I think that's wise to go ahead and wait it out. You may get a few weeds popping up in it. You can apply some mulch to that, but go ahead and wait before you put any plants in the ground. It's going to be tempting to do it, but I'd go ahead and wait, especially as the heat starts to come on. We're now in the middle of it all. If you really want to see some color, by the way, I apologize, Karen, is it an ornamental bed or is it a vegetable bed? Oh, I'm sorry, you kind of cut out. It's ornamental?
site. No, it's a vegetable garden.
Oh, vegetable garden, great. Yes, preparing a bed is the best mode of action right now. As a matter of fact, if you want to know a little bit more about fall gardening, you can join us on August the 15th at the Muntz Library if you got time. 10 o'clock in the morning. We don't charge for those programs, and Louis Petter, one of our Brazos County Master Gardeners, will be available to present the best methods for doing that. But yeah, you're spot on. Preparation for that bed is the best thing you can do right now. Go ahead and put some mulch over the top of it to suppress some of the weeds that may start coming up in it. Not saying that you'll get them, just, a little bit of prevention helps. And yeah, just kind of let it settle in. There is a time where you would put in some fertilizer, and I'm losing a ratio of, like how much of what kind of product, how much do you actually apply to that landscape. You will be prepared. That'll be part of the process of preparing that bed for vegetable gardening in the fall. Karen, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Can you please remind me of our conversation? Send an email to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. I can provide a little bit more information in preparation for that experience, and then also kind of as remind you of the date in the email as well.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. So what are you growing in your garden right now, Karen?
Right now, I don't have anything. I just had 2 raised bed gardens installed because I bought a new house a couple of years ago, and I missed the garden that I had in the previous house, and so I'm going to start now. But I'm a northerner, so I'm learning the southern plants. I was thinking to do in the fall the lettuce, carrots, radishes, things like that, but I had great success with okra and tomatoes in previous years.
Oh.
So I think that'll be a next summer thing.
Of course. You still have a little window for okra. I take that back when I said, wait until fall. Yes, the plants you're talking about, yes, you can wait. You can still put in, I think you've still got a window for okra if you want to, if you just want a corner of okra, you should be able to pull those up in time to get fruit off of them.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that I would have to wait a few months, but just having the soil just dumped in a couple of days ago, it should be ready to go for a few okra.
Well, yeah, maybe wait a week.
Okay.
All right.
All righty.
Well, Karen, thank you.
Thank you very much. I will send an email.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Well, folks, that was a great reminder. Karen, thank you so much for calling up to Garden Success. It's a great opportunity to remind y'all that we've got an expert in vegetable gardening that will be at the Muntz Library next month, August the 15th, 10 a.m. in the morning. We'd love for you to join us. That is a no admission program. No admission. Just come on down, We'll provide you a great time and some wonderful information that will help you be successful for your vegetable gardening experience in the fall. Well, folks, we're getting really close to top of the hour. I really do appreciate your patronage and your support of Garden Success, as well as all of the great programs that are offered through KAMU. We're here to help you be successful in whatever you're doing, whether it's cultural programs, political programs, maybe you want to get to know what's happening around town or throughout the state, as well as best practices in gardening with yours truly. We're here to help improve your experience as a resident of Bryan and College Station, as well as across the region of Texas. I've had callers, I've had individuals that said, I get your show in Dallas. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Thank you very much. Little friendly competition with our colleagues up in Dallas and Fort Worth. I'm kidding. But yeah, we really do appreciate your support. Thank you very much for your time as well. This program is brought to you every Thursday starting at 12 o'clock. We wind up at 1 o'clock, top of the hour. And I'm here to be able to sit back and talk with you and talk a little bit about my experiences. Before I forget, Did I mention Cercospora fungal infection and figs? Why, yes, I did. You thought I forgot. I almost forgot. Well, there are fungal pathogen that will get on the leaves of figs, and I'm starting to see that right now. I'm not going to attribute it to Cercospora, but it is a fungal pathogen. We typically call it rust, fig rust. And I'm starting to see it on my foliage, and wherever I see it, if it's right within reason. You don't want to completely defoliate your tree, and it may not be practical to do that anyway. But the one in ground in the backyard, Celeste, it is a champ. It's been performing magnificently. To date, I've collected from around June the 15th to date, I've collected about 27 pounds of figs off of that tree. Now, they don't come all in at once. I did have a friend ask, hey, can I have 7 pounds? And I had to explain, well, those 7 pounds, I've eaten those 7 pounds, right? As I get them on, because they will start to degrade quickly, right? After you get them off, you pick them when they're ripe, and then you've got a couple of weeks in the refrigerator with them. But they'll start to tank pretty quickly. So I've already eaten all of them, so I had to tell my friend, I'm sorry, I don't have the pounds of figs that I can give to you. But over the course of the past month, I've gotten about 25 pounds, so I'm really happy with that. Now I'm starting to see a little bit of fungal pathogen on the leaves, fig rust. A few leaves here and there, I pull them off and dispose of them, just throw them in the trash. Or I put them in the compost. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I do. And, eventually the plant will succumb more to that, but it's an annual process. Remember, folks, there are no fungicides that are appropriate for use on fig trees. Now, having said that, copper-based products have been used as a fungicide, but as a professional, I can tell you there are no fungicides that are rated for use on fig trees. Another gentleman contacted me with an image of a persimmon tree that had what I think is Cercospora on it, on the leaves. But again, there are no fungicides that are rated for use on persimmon or fig trees. Right, so we try to get by with what we got. I'll talk about that more next week. You got to save a little bit for the next week, a little story that you can tell the following week. So we'll revisit the correspondence that I had with one of our residents about his Asian persimmon and what I'm thinking is a fungal pathogen on the leaves of that tree. My fig tree is doing great. I'm sure your plants are doing well, especially after the heat of yesterday. Well, folks, brace yourself. It's going to stay hot for the next couple of months. But other than that, I wish you well, and of course I always look forward to seeing you in the garden.
You've been listening to Garden Success with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Stephen Brueggerhoff. Join us again next week as Stephen discusses your questions about gardening and landscaping in the Brazos Valley.
Garden Success is brought to you in part by Martha's Bloomers. For over 25 years, residents of Central Texas have visited Martha's Bloomers for plants, art and home decor, and a full-service restaurant featuring handcrafted meals and a wide selection of hot teas and desserts. Martha's Bloomers, located on Highway 6 in Navasota.